See?
Testing. Alright. So let's go into it, people. Let's go into it. Today, obviously, got one of the biggest stories is Charlie Kirk, political pundit, a commentator, affiliated with the right wing and Donald Trump, and one of the biggest right wing pundits, was shot and assassinated at one of his conventions where he usually debates people at university campuses and so forth. And yeah, he was shot and killed essentially. So that's one of the biggest stories right now. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop straight into it. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's been covered so much. Oh. See if we can find a good...
Not counting gang violence. Great.
Yeah, shit, that's graphic. So let me try to find a safer video that won't get us cancelled, because that one was... You're going to see the bullet going through and the blood spurt everywhere, you understand? So let's try to find one which is a bit more censored, a bit more...
That's a lot of people.
Twitch, you understand? Twitch, really.
We're going to be here for a couple hours. Get comfortable. Bring the best libs that Utah has to offer.
I think the irony of this as well is right before he was assassinated, he was being questioned on mass shootings and essentially questions around gun control. And obviously, he's pro Second Amendment and pro arms, and also probably likely the assassination was due to his affiliation with Donald Trump, due to essentially a lot of the right-wing pundits right now are kind of just propaganda machines, right-wing propaganda machines for people like Trump right now. They're putting money within these independent bodies outside of Fox News and the traditional legacy media. So obviously people see that, and even though there's videos of him coming out and being a bit more critical of Israel, in general his general position was anti-Palestinian and pro-Israel. And in the context of what's going on right now in the world, obviously the UN courts, the ICC and the ICJ, so these are the highest courts in the world, have ruled that Israel's committing genocide. What's it called again? There's war crimes being committed, and on top of that, there's been ethnic cleansing, and even prior to all of these, they'd already ruled on apartheid. And the significance of the UN voting on this is because, one, the UN was originally set up was originally called the League of Nations, and it was set up post-World War II, post-World War One, by essentially Western powers like America. So with that being said, the people with the most veto power is America, is a lot of the Western nations. Now, as the years have gone on, and even though it's meant to be a global body, but it served mostly the interest of Western powers, you've seen more other countries that are part of the UN have their voice being valued more and heard. So we're at a state now where a lot of all the groups within NATO, even though it is a group that kind of has a bias towards Western powers, in spite of that, even them are saying, but partially because of the increased role of other countries as well, it's particularly in the global south within the UN, but even in spite of that, they're saying, listen, all these countries around the world, we've come together and we've evaluated what's going on, and by international law, this is dictionary textbook genocide. And a lot of people don't understand what genocide is in relation to international law, so I'll explain it. Genocide in relation to international law is a preventative law. So it's about intent. It's not about the amount of people that are killed. And there's a particular reason for this, because you had the Holocaust, right? And 6 million Jews, between 3 million and 6 million Jews were killed. And obviously, there was a previous genocide before that. You had the Armenian genocide, but it was the Holocaust that presented the whole concept of genocide to the international community. You have the Nuremberg trials and so forth, And people said never again. We don't want this to happen again. So they made international law, and the whole purpose of the law is to prevent the genocide. So if the intent can be proven that you wanted to ethnically cleanse a people through displacement, preventing births, through basically, because people don't realize there was a lot leading up to the Holocaust of the Jews within Germany. It didn't just happen with gas chambers, but it was a gradual thing, and that intent was there for a while. So based off the Holocaust, they made this law. Now skip forward to the 90s, and you can see there's now a double standard. Why is there a double standard? Well, because there is another ethnic cleansing and another genocide that happens, but in the global south, in Africa. You have Rwanda. And people said never again. Now, what you have to remember about Rwanda is that the time before the genocide kicked off, you had the UN there, UN peacekeeping troops. You had American troops there. You had also French and I think Belgium troops over there, but you might have to verify those troops. Remember, Rwanda is a former, I believe, German colony. And a lot of the ethnic tensions had been stoked up by the colonial powers, essentially. The ethnicities weren't really a thing. It was more so to do with clanship and property. Yes, those divisions were there, but it wasn't really an ethnic thing. It was more so to do with who was settled, who was the elite, and who owned cattle. And those were the Tutsis, and those that weren't were the Hutu. But it was a bit more fluid. But these became more distinct along ethnic lines, obviously, when the Germans arrived. Now, fast forward, this boils over. You have all these European and international bodies there, and what do when the Hutu start ethnically cleansing the Tutsi? All the European powers, the same ones that said never again, the UN peacekeeping troopers, their priority was to protect Westerners and get them out of the country. And not only did they help them get out of the country and said we're not helping any of Rwandans, but on top of that, some of these same powers, after they got their people out of the country, then funded different sides of the conflict, like the French, like Belgium. So post-war, basically Rwanda said, yo, you guys said you have this international law saying never again, but it happened again. So that's why in this context, the international law around genocide is preventative. You can't wait till all the people have been killed to say it's a genocide. The whole purpose of the law is to prove intent, because you don't want another Holocaust and we don't want another situation in Rwanda. And these were some of the biggest incidents that was brought to the international court. So he's pro-Israel in spite of there's a current genocide going on, if that makes sense. So the only reason I really had to explain that is because, one, a lot of people don't understand the concept of genocide, and two, people don't understand the gratification of where people stand on, because the genocide means you're ethnically cleansing, you're killing a group of people, and the genocide's ongoing now. So yeah, he was assassinated, and most likely was either based off him being affiliated with Israel, or him being affiliated with Trump, or him being a right-wing pundit. These are the three most likely reasons why he was assassinated, which means it was a political assassination, essentially. But remember, America's in a very divisive place, and it's very bipartisan. So yeah, we're going to hop back into this, but that was my 2 cents, essentially, on when we're trying to conceptualize why someone might do this, right? You have to understand the different political motivations, and this isn't a justification, but it's understanding the incentives that will motivate someone to do something like this, essentially. So yeah, he was a very big commentator, and his in particular, I would say also he was young, so he was about the same age as me, I believe, 27. But it was because as a right-wing pundit, remember the Republicans traditionally get a lot of the older supporters, but he was tapping into a younger audience, you understand? So that's also another potential incentive for anyone that potentially is anti-Israel. And remember, anti-Israel isn't just pro-Palestinian people, but you also have people on the right, usually driven more so by anti-Semitism, but also anti-Israel. So there could be a plethora of reasons why that. Probably also the fact that he's affiliated with Trump, and a lot of people don't like Trump for various reasons. And also the fact that he had a lot of his right-wing talking points, whether it be to do with race, whether it be to do with crime, whether it be to do with abortion, whether it be to do with certain people's rights. And yeah, a lot of people didn't like the way he was talking. This does not justify the killing. He was, at the end of the day, in spite of, he has a right to freedom of speech, in spite of whether you agree with him or not. Not to say that his words don't have impacts, but at the end of the day, places like America have protocols to enable these things to happen, and also these things to be challenged, you understand? So with that being said, if you don't like what you said there is protocols where you can challenge him, you understand? And there's protocols where you can also go out and say, and this is not a privilege that's afforded in a lot of different countries. So there's no justification for why you should take another person's life just because of what they're saying, when it doesn't, even if you feel like it's infringing on your rights, it's not directly, it's not a direct assault. He's just exercising his freedom of speech, and you are supposed to use your freedom of speech to challenge anything that you don't necessarily agree with. But at the end of the day, we also have to be realistic. The place America is right now, and the place by extension of that, any NATO or any Western nation is very divided, and a lot of it's due to socio-economic issues. In summary, I say the Roman Empire's fallen, Rome's done, and that's when you start to see a lot of the how to say, false narratives and mythology that holds these nations up together fall apart, and it's kind of left with the reality, which is a lot of these countries are very divided, and a lot of the economic issues, and in particular these global conflicts that we're engaging in, are only going to cause these divisions to get worse. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it, because I want to move on from this is a big story, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. You've probably seen it on Instagram as well. I posted it, but yeah, he got shot in the neck. Right now, they don't know who the shooter is. They've arrested an old guy, an old white dude, but some images were released of another man, and they're saying potentially, they don't know who the shooter is, but potentially it might be this guy. If I go on my Instagram.
The region, even globally. How are Qatari officials
Not counting gang violence. Great.
Right.
I can.
If you're in France today,
Alright, so we're on the Frontline Media, Instagram. You can see this is the aftermath of the shooting. So it's very chaotic.
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh my
He
God.
was a big commentator on Turning Point USA. One of the co-founders as well. And this happened at Utah Valley University. Yeah, he's dead. He's dead. Anyone that's seen the video, there isn't much.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh!
Rest in peace. Like I said, irregardless of how you feel about no one deserves to lose their life. Over exercising their right to freedom of expression. But at the end of the day, you have to be honest. We have to be honest with the state of America, the state of the West. It's very divided. We have to be honest about, he's a person in a position of power, so his words do hold weight and do have influence and impact. And to that powerless people, he's an easy target. And remember, America is a place where there is a lot of firearms. So you can take action on things you don't feel happy about. And remember, that is also a lot of conflict is essentially when the talking stops. You know, it's a battle between ideologies. You understand? It's almost like a physical form of debate war. You understand? So when some people, when the talking stops, the shooting starts, you understand? So that's where I think the West is and place, and especially America's at right now. Not everyone wants to challenge people in positions of power, to be frank. I think it's at a state now where people are trying to take him out because they feel like it's not working, essentially. They feel either these people are too powerful and have too much influence for us to have a significant impact. So we're just going to use our Second Amendment instead of, I believe freedom of expression is the First Amendment. I'm not too sure, I need to double check. But instead of using the amendments that protect freedom of expression, we're going to use our Second Amendment to get what we want. And if you're being honest, remember, how did the Americans get their independence from the British? So we have to understand that there is a fundamental contradiction within the Constitution where it provides two opportunities to get what you want. And if we look at the honest history of America, America is not Britain. It's not these other places where, yes, Britain is a bad man person. Don't get it twisted. But what Britain does is play chess. And what I mean by that is they will throw you in a war, but they already have all the info on you. And when they're about to win the war, that's when they'll force you into diplomacy. So even though there was no chance of you winning this war, they made you sign contracts and so forth, pretend like this war was ended through a fair agreement, even though they had all the leverage, you understand? And most of American history, it wasn't solved through diplomacy, it was solved through the war to the end, you understand? So the way I'm looking at this is the people that are responsible for these actions, this is probably their incentives. They probably, it's not a thing of they want to chat. It's not a thing of they want to use freedom of expression. It's a thing of they probably want to challenge the whole existing status quo. And if that means conflict, if that means sparking that, then that's so. Whether it's people involved within the institution or outside of it, something clearly, someone's trying to start something, in my opinion. And yeah, they're doing it through direct violence, not through talking. So this is a state we have to be very wary of as commentators, as people that work in the media, as journalists. Remember, our job is dangerous. Despite the fact that we have the right to freedom of expression, doesn't mean it's guaranteed. You have to fight for your rights. So you have to remember that media does have influence and power, and to the powerless, especially those that feel that their only power is not within their voice, but within their violence, you are a target, especially in these times. So we have to be careful. But yeah, man, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. This is the state of the world right now, so everyone has to be very vigilant and cautious of how they report and cover their stories and how they interact with the media nowadays, because in this information society, that information can be used against you. But yeah, man, without further ado, let's move on to the next one, man, which is to do with Israel, man. I'm not going to go too deep into it because a lot of details there are on, but essentially recently Israel bombed Qatar, and their excuse was essentially that there were Hamas operatives there. But this is a bit disingenuous considering the fact that for the longest time, essentially Doha and Qatar has been a neutral ground where especially Israelis and Americans have known that because this is the neutral ground, this is a place we can interact with Hamas diplomats on behalf of Hamas. So this is when most negotiations and talks between the Israelis, American parties, and opposing parties such as Hamas and Iran are able to meet. So technically, these are diplomats they're assassinating. It's not combatants. On top of that, this is a violation of international law. Israel has bombed another sovereign state, and they're saying this is in protection of defense. But like I said, if you already know Hamas are there and have approved it months and months before years, and so have the Americans, you can't then say because Hamas are there in self-defense we need to attack Hamas, because the reason Hamas are there is because you guys have approved for them to be there, because that's the only place you guys can have negotiations between the two different parties. And this is common throughout history. I mentioned diplomacy earlier. If you look at most conflicts and most diplomatic agreements, both parties, whether it's the Geneva Convention or whatever convention, the convention is usually in the place where both these parties are up front. They have to meet in a neutral place. So it's very common for a neutral country like Qatar or Switzerland or these places to host two conflicting powers and have diplomats on their behalf, you understand, to engage with each other. And that's what Qatar essentially was doing. So essentially Israel have violated international law, and they hoped they would get in the Hamas targets, but they did not. So it's a very bad look on their behalf right now. And to kind of distract themselves from it, they have also launched strikes on Sana'a in Yemen, saying they were targeting Houthis. I don't know about the extent of the success of either of these strikes, but I do know that they've been confirmed civilian casualties, both in Yemen and both within Sana'a. The Israelis said they warned the parties, but Qatari governmental representatives have said this is disingenuous and far too little too late, because the notification, we weren't given due ample time to, one, challenge what you guys are doing, and two, to prepare for whatever's happening. So yeah, it was made in bad faith, and essentially right now Israel have violated international law. They have attacked sovereign nation states in the name of self-defense, despite the fact that the context of the supposed threats within these sovereign nations was already known about by both Israel, by both America for diplomatic purposes, months, years in advance. So yeah, it's very disingenuous. But yeah, man, let's move on next. Let's see what else is happening in the world. Oh yeah, this is what I was talking about. So this is a supposed individual.
Welcome back to BBC News, and straight to breaking news, an important development from the US, because the FBI in the last minute or so have released a picture of a person of interest in the Charlie Kirk killing, and that is what they have just posted on their account. Earlier there was a news conference about 3 hours ago where they told us that they had identified a suspect, they were tracking a suspect, they had tracked him onto campus, they had tracked him off campus, they had recovered an automatic weapon, they had said he was likely to be of college age, and they were going through a few more processes before they said they would release the image to the public, and now they have done that. There is the image on the screen, and I'm sure in the coming minutes and hours there will be a closer image, an enhanced image around the face, but they're dressed in black. The image, the FBI release of a person of interest in the Charlie Kirk shooting. And of course we've learned all of those details over the last couple of hours in terms of the event. We saw the gathering there at the university in Utah, a huge gathering of students and others around that tented area, the conversations that Charlie Kirk was having in his debate, and then one shot was fired, and eyewitnesses talking about the blood that spurted from his neck. And of course he was taken to hospital, and hours later he was pronounced dead. But the investigation, well, that has been rapid through the course of the hours.
So it's looking like a similar situation, I think, to the shooter of the health insurance CEO. So where the person now is on the run, and they have an image of the person, but still they don't know where his whereabouts is. And the person they have currently arrested is looking likely not to be the perpetrator, some old random guy they arrested. But yeah, let's move on, people, man. Let's move on, people. I saw something interesting about Jamaica almost clearing its financial burden to the IMF. I think there's a lot of I'm very critical of the new status quo in Jamaica. And I'm going to break it down why, because I don't think it's all roses. But we'll delve into it. But to remember, a lot of these countries, including Jamaica, including Nigeria, were set up by corporations on behalf of the British Empire and other European empires to serve their interests. And initially, it wasn't this African slaves that were benefiting when they arrived. It wasn't the indigenous people, but it was the descendants of colonists and the corporations and the government and monarchy that was benefiting off the wealth of Jamaica. So remember that before I even go into what I think is going on today. But remember that just because Jamaica's doing well on paper does not necessarily mean... Sorry, people, I've already told you, there's no co-hosting. This is a stream, you understand? If you want to see what I go on, click on the link here. Click on the link. And you can see, but we got our host here, man. We got our host here. No co-hosting, unfortunately, yeah? Alright. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Jamaica is about to close a major chapter in its economic history. For decades, the country has been tied to the International Monetary Fund, more commonly known as the IMF. From large bailout programs in the 1970s to strict reform agreements in the 2010s, IMF support has been both a lifeline and a burden.
You know, I remember back in 2013 already, the odds were not that it was going to be successful.
Now, in 2025, Jamaica's outstanding balance with the IMF has fallen to a tiny fraction of what it once was. At the end of June 2025, IMF records show Jamaica owed just SDR 21.24 million. That translates to about 28 million US dollars. Compare that to nearly $1 billion US dollars borrowed under earlier programs, and the scale of the progress is clear. This repayment milestone means Jamaica is set to finally pay off the IMF.
The country at the time was in a very, very bad financial condition. Couldn't borrow on the financial markets. The debt levels were astronomically high, and the fiscal position of the country was very negative. Fast forward, circumstances have changed enormously.
The IMF is a global financial institution created after World War II. It has 190 member countries, including Jamaica.
So essentially, I'll say the IMF is like a... Remember, if you look at the whole global neoliberal system, and especially look at it from a post-colonial lens, what you'll realize is the world and a lot of the nation states, a lot of their economies, their parliamentary structure, political structure, was defined by a few European empires, their central banks, their monarchies, and their governments. This defined a lot of the world. And this hit a boiling point, obviously, with the 2 world wars, because what made these things world wars was that not these European countries fighting each other, but the fact that they had empires, and that they were essentially fighting over imperial possessions, which made it into a global conflict. But really, zoom forward when we get to the Cold War, so post-World War II, and what you have to do is the West had to transition. They had to transition from colonialism to a new form of neo-colonialism. Remember, and I'll say this is summarized in I believe is it the Atlantic Charter? So I need to get it up so I know exactly. But essentially, when Great Britain wanted America to be involved in the war, America said, okay, we'll let you guys join the war, but it needs to be, you guys need to let go of your colonial positions. And why? Because the West was about to enter a Cold War, post-World War II, with the Soviet Union, because they were communists. And the biggest fear, remember, all these Western, sorry people, I've said no co-hosting. Sorry, no co-hosting. The biggest, what's it called again? Threat at the time, especially to the elite across all these empires, across all these nations that essentially run and are the main benefactories, was communism, was the workers being empowered within their nations. So, in fact, after they defeated the fascists, a lot of the same Western nations employed a lot of these fascists, because the biggest anti-communists were the fascists. But at the end of the day, you can't fight communism with capitalism and democracy if you have colonial subjects. It doesn't make any sense. You cannot say democracy and liberal economics and so forth is better if you have colonial possessions. So that was ultimately the theory behind, during that, Britain let go of India. And then in the 1950s, Macmillan made the Winds of Change speech, and he let a lot of these quote-unquote sovereign nations become independent. Even though they remain part of the Commonwealth, even though the political structure of most of these nations was British, a lot of the leaderships of these nations served the interests of American and British interests, and furthermore, a lot of the nation states themselves were created by British or American corporations. They weren't created by the people. A lot of these nation states don't even have a constitution made by the people. It was a colonial hangover inherited from when they were a colony, and now they just remixed it for when they are now a supposed independent nation. So how did America, Britain and NATO hold into their empire? Through its military-industrial complex and the financialization of the global economy. Through the financialization of the global economy, getting rid of the gold standard, making all the other countries in the world, have their standard be the US dollar. Essentially, they recolonized the whole world. And the IMF is one of the biggest institutions seen behind that, in neo-colonialism, in neoliberalism, continuing the legacy of colonialism, supposedly in the post-colonial era. And the IMF was seen as one of the biggest institutions that was behind that. So we have to be very critical in the same vein as when you simply cleared your debt to the IMF, doesn't necessarily mean everything's good and well.
In Jamaica. Its main purpose is to provide short and medium-term financial support to countries facing balance of payments crises, where a country cannot meet its international payment obligations or needs to stabilize its currency. Unlike development banks, which fund long-term projects such as highways, schools, or hospitals, the IMF provides policy-based loans. These loans come with strict conditions.
So this is why it's seen as neo-colonialism, because a lot of these debts were essentially inherited as these nations became independent. So it's a slavery thing. You're paying back your slave master. And because the IMF is based in the Western nations, even though, remember, most of the resources that underpin, remember, they've got rid of the gold standard, but the reality of it is that underpins the global economy is in the global south. It's in places like Jamaica, Africa, India. That's where the resources that underpin this global economy. It's not the dollar. But in the same vein, the IMF, this is where the neo-colonialism part comes in. They say, if we invest in you, you guys have to follow these policies. And a lot of these policies structured the nation in a way where it benefited the elite from the West, and it benefited the West as opposed to the common people within these nations, you understand? And that's where the neo-colonial factor comes in. Because they have influence over policy to get investment, it's a neo-colonial thing.
Countries that borrow must commit to fiscal reforms, structural changes, and tighter financial discipline. For Jamaica, borrowing from the IMF became unavoidable in the early 2010s. The country had one of the highest debt-to-GDP ratios in the world, peaking at around 146% in 2013. That meant Jamaica owed nearly 1.5 times the value of all the goods and
The reason I say this
services
as
produced
well
in
is,
its...
at what cost does this come? Because you're not just going to pay off a debt simply through nothing. You might have to sell off public assets, national assets. You might have to allow foreign investment, whether it's the Chinese, Americans, or foreign companies, which then essentially get to profit off your natural resources. And is that going back into the pocket of your peoples? Or is it going into their company and into their economy? And is it just benefiting the elite of Jamaica? You understand? These are the things we have to think about, not just in the context of Jamaica, but a lot of places around the world when you hear through, simply through paying off debts and through the IMF, the country is now fixed. It's never that simple. It might be fixed for a certain select few people, but there's always more nuance and complexity within a story. But one thing we should take into context is, so the current leader of Jamaica has, he's been re-elected. He's part of the JLP, and they had basically a landslide vote within Jamaica. And this is very significant because their opposition, the PNP, People's National Party, and you've got Jamaica Labour Party, Jamaica Labour, right? They used to fight each other, especially in the 70s. And essentially the JLP was the CIA and American proxy. And the reason they needed a proxy within Jamaica, because remember, this was the Cold War. And what was happening within the Cold War, the PNP, what's it called again, was essentially more affiliated with Cuba, the Soviet Union, and more communist, left-wing, Marxist ideals. Within the context of the time, that was a big threat to the American status quo. Remember, it may sound like conspiracy, but remember, America feared Cuba. Remember the Bay of Pigs. America got ex-Cubans, you understand? Sorry, not, ex-Cubans, so Cubans that have left Cuba. A lot of these were, though, Cubans of white Cubans, of the elite class in Cuba that left Cuba, because they were the benefactors of when Cuba was essentially a right-wing dictatorship. But yeah, the Americans sponsored them and the CIA sponsored them to go and reinvade Cuba. Obviously it didn't work, but these are the things the CIA will do behind closed doors. So the CIA on one side was funding the war, and the other side was the USSR, and the more left side funding the PNP. And what you have to understand about this conflict was the reason it blew up so big in Jamaica and still persists partly to the day was because a lot of the garrison communities, which essentially communities set up for the sake of conflicts, and it goes back to the colonial era, was now used in the context and purpose of politics. So in order for people to get certain jobs, in order for certain communities to live a good standard, you had to vote for the right party. And if you voted for the wrong party, it resulted in conflicts. And this conflicts, the proxies would be the garrison communities, the places they would leave the guns, and so forth. So the facts zoom forward to today, and that there has been a landslide victory for the current Jamaican president. The fact that he used JLP, and the fact there was no conflict is a very, very significant landmark in history, you understand? And the fact also Jamaica's no longer has is debt to the IMF means Jamaica's reclaiming its ownership, you understand? So this is a very, very significant point within history.
Economy each year. With high interest payments consuming the budget, little money was left for development. Investors lost confidence and economic growth stalled.
To reduce the debt and restore growth in the economy.
In a world of less,
Latte for joy.
Sky Mobile wants everyone to expect more.
Another element behind this, though, there is a colorism issue.
With job,
not just in Jamaica, but a lot of parts of the Caribbean and even parts of Africa. And whether Labourite or PNP, a lot of the people that were driving, that are leaders of these political parties, come from the class of lighter skin, descendants of Europeans. And it does also address in spite of the party, a fundamental class issue that's linked to race within places like Jamaica and the Caribbean, and the hangover of colonialism and slavery. And the reason I bring this up is because we have to remember the slogan of Jamaica is out of many one people. But the reality of Jamaica is it's 98% black people, Afro descendants, people from African slaves, descendants, or dark-skinned indigenous people, or whatever you want to call them. It's black Jamaicans make up 98% of the population. And to say that they are in a position of power in Jamaica as a whole, still it can be reevaluated today, but it's definitely something that we have to look upon critically, even though, like I said, remember what I said, Jamaica in the beginning, when it was set up as a colony, was very profitable, but it wasn't profitable for the slaves. It wasn't profitable for the indigenous people. It was even that profitable for the white working class, indentured servants that were sent there from Ireland and all these other places that they made overseers and so forth. It was made profitable for the capitalist class that owned the islands through corporations that had been set up, whether it was a Royal African Company, whether it was there's a whole Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company. There's a whole plethora of companies that was set up, that essentially set up the infrastructure of these nations, and these companies were the benefactories. The monarchy were the benefactories. The Queen was the benefactories. The elite and the capitalist class was the benefactories. But to say the slaves and the indentured servants and the indentured servants from India that came over, and to say it wasn't. But Jamaica was wealthy at the time. So these are the things. Wealth does not necessarily, the whole concept of trickle-down economics has been proven. Just because a nation is wealthy and has a lot of GDP does not necessarily translate into the entire population progressing and having their material needs addressed. And one of the biggest stories right now in Jamaica, which we'll get into this because my brain goes on tangents all the time, but we'll get onto it in a sec.
Creation. It is in that context that some of the unavoidable hard decisions had to be taken. I hope the Jamaican people understand.
I think there are a couple of points that we need to make. Is that we have a particular economic problem, a problem caused by a public debt which is just too high.
In 2013, the IMF approved a major program called the Extended Fund Facility, or EFF. This arrangement gave Jamaica access to SDR 615.38 million, equivalent to about $932 million at the time. The first disbursement, worth about $207 million, was released in May 2013. The loan came with strict conditions. Jamaica had to maintain high primary surpluses, meaning it had to collect more in revenue than it spent on everything except interest. It also had to reform its tax system, restructure state-owned enterprises, and restrain public sector wages. These measures were painful, but they were the price of IMF support. In 2016, after progress under the EFF, Jamaica transitioned to a new arrangement. This time, the IMF approved a precautionary standby arrangement worth about $1.6 billion. Unlike the earlier program, Jamaica did not draw the full amount. Instead, the arrangement acted as an insurance policy. If Jamaica faced external shocks, it could access the funds. So, while the approved amounts under IMF programs were large, the actual outstanding debt fluctuated. What matters is how much Jamaica truly owed at different points in time.
Now, when you look at what we've been able to achieve during this period of stabilization, though it involved trade-offs, though it involved compression, we had 20 consecutive periods of quarterly growth between...
Well, my general, I'm on stream right now, yeah? So right now we're on a stream with a Maroon Chief, and right now we're streaming the Jamaica election, and we're streaming Jamaica and the IMF. So what I was saying right now, obviously there's a lot of positive news around the JLP and the current leader in Jamaica, but I think there's some things we do have to be critical. You understand? Because not everything's roses.
Yes.
So they're saying right now a lot of positive things, that Jamaica is no longer in debt to the IMF and so forth. But my question I was posing was, does this necessarily mean this will benefit all the Jamaican people, or will it benefit just a few?
Yeah, all right. You see, now, that happened there. I'm on live, yeah?
Yeah, you're on live right now.
All right, yes, this is the Maroon Governor General for England. And what we're saying now, the Labour Party, what they're voting now, is the same poverty, the same destruction for us.
Okay.
Yeah, they're working with some man where destabilize us for country, keep the country in that we can live. The youth them can born and fly away, go be a slave anywhere in the world, and don't develop the country.
So
that is the method that they use all over upon our people. Say, no matter who in power there, yeah, if you're not a Maroon, you have no right there. All the man on the island there have the right for that island, entitled for that island, to own that island is the Maroon them. Yeah, so the rest of any man that's Jamaican and you're not a Maroon, sign up to the Maroon government, a Maroon part of the Maroon nation, you don't have no right in a Jamaica. You're just a slave as a Jamaican. A Jamaican is a corporation and a bank.
This is what I was saying earlier, people. Remember, Jamaica and a lot of these other nation states were set up by corporations. You understand? To set up infrastructure for a capitalist elite class in the UK, for the monarchy, for a few select group of people, and they made wealth of it, but the slaves didn't make any money. The Indian Indentured Service didn't make any money. The indigenous people didn't make any money. No. But Jamaica was a very, very wealthy place in that time. Don't get it twisted. Colonial Jamaica was very, very rich. So we have to remember, just if Jamaica is wealthy now, just if Nigeria is wealthy now, doesn't mean all that wealth is going to everyone.
All right. So what happened now? The Maroon them in the island. We give them a chance back in the days to run the country, and be, because we think them gonna be smart and business wise for create instructor and not plans. But we'll find out that they are dunce. And they have our silver, they have our gold, they have our everything, our land. So we know come in now and realize now in this time, say they are, all of them is scammer. They don't care about the citizen down there. So we have to nationalize our people back now and make them be sovereignty national.
Do you think, I'm going to pose a question to you. Okay, there's something around the world called Dutch disease, right? And I'll explain what Dutch disease is. Dutch disease is, say, for example, a country like Nigeria, a country like Venezuela, places where there's a lot of oil, they discover a lot of oil. What ends up happening is all this oil ends up benefiting another nation, another economy, and just the elite within that country that are benefiting off it. And the rest of it causes political corruption, poverty, inequality, like we see in Nigeria now and other places, you understand? So we call that Dutch disease. Do you think that that Jamaica could enter a Dutch disease? That they could just exploit bauxite, all the natural resources of Jamaica, but the people them don't experience the wealth of all these natural...
Same thing. Every Caribbean that Jamaica knows, the colonial system, every Caribbean, they put that on.
Okay.
Every Caribbean in the Caribbean. Now remember, we used to respond for Cayman Island as a Jamaican, as a Maroon. We are the Maroon. We used to respond for Cayman Island. Cayman Island used to spend our money. We are the ruler for England, and many things what happen. People think we are foreigners in England. What we learned since I've been here, we are the rightful owner for this island. We are the first is here. Yeah?
Some of the first peoples across the whole world, whether you're talking Americas, England, the first, I mean, if we pull up the Cheddar Man right now, it's a black person, you know. We have to remember the first migration out of Africa was all black people. It wasn't until the you see later migrations from European farmers, and even before that, nomads from the Middle East, that you see a lot of Europe become light skinned. A lot of the first peoples across the whole world was all dark skinned people, dark skinned black people.
Right. So we are the traveler. We used to travel all about a civilized place. And we teach people to brush teeth. 3 times we civilize Europe. Imagine Europe, and 3 times we civilize it. So we get a civilized place and we are nothing. People can understand that the government is here now operating, and we are giving back people their nationality and get them out of the slave system. All we can do for people now to get them out of the slave system, to nationalize them and make them be a part of us, our nation. Now before, we never used to document people like danger, so our people back all over.
But yeah, man, people, what we're gonna do is we're gonna end the stream here and we're gonna resume it, because this is a very important issue. What's going on in Jamaica right now, because it's a case study for, I think, all over the world. And right now, I'm not a bad man person. All hands up to the fact that Jamaica is clearing its debt and it's gonna have a lot of a brighter future. But we always have to be critical and ask, who is that for? Is it gonna benefit everyone? And if it's not gonna benefit everyone, what should the rest of we be doing? How should we be preparing for it? And before I end the stream, I want to click on actually one story, which is the privatization of Jamaica's beaches. And right now, see where my grandparents live. My grandma's Jamaican, and rest in peace, my grandfather, he was Bayesian. But they retired in Antigua. And in Antigua, all the beaches are public. But in Jamaica, like a place like Nigeria as well, a lot of the beaches are private. So what does this mean for the fishermen? What does this mean for the local communities that rely on the beaches as their lifeline? And this is probably this privatization of the beaches is probably what also contributed to Jamaica clearing its debt, because Jamaica's main economy is tourism. So you have all these new fancy hotels, you have what's it called again, all these foreigners coming in spending their money, but the hotels, the companies might not necessarily be Jamaican. They might employ Jamaicans, but are they paying them the right wages? You understand? So these are the questions. All right.
Number one, you come there selling out the island to private.
This is where they work. Say they don't have another job. They don't have nothing else to turn to.
Tourists can pay for exclusive access to beaches at all-inclusive
by
resorts.
gold. Yes, like
but
I said
everyday
earlier,
Jamaicans
people
are increasingly being blocked out of that.
When you push a fisherman from a beach, where did you want him to go? We are living in between waters, and we have no access to a beach.
Some Jamaicans are organizing to take down the colonial-era land laws that still affect them today.
Jamaican came into emancipation landless and homeless, and that problem have not changed in Jamaica.
And they're suing companies for cutting off their access to the beaches.
And we also will not stop until the entire Jamaican public is able to access them.
One thing I notice about the Caribbean in general, and from my travels there, and from the history I know, is that a lot of The Cayman Islands is probably the most obvious example because after obviously the British took the Cayman Islands from Jamaica, the City of London and the Bank of England have embezzled a lot of money through the Cayman Islands. A lot of politicians have bought assets in West London and all these expensive areas through essentially shell companies. So my question I pose to the people then is a lot of this private and financialization and so forth. Where does that leave if you're poor in the Caribbean, you're born there. Do you have more power than a foreigner with money? That's my simple question. You're born there, but you haven't got money. Do you have more rights and privilege than a foreigner that can buy your passport? Because a lot of these places, like Dominica, you can buy citizenship if you bring money into the country. You buy up the place with the fiat currency, isn't it? So these are the things I want us to think about as Africans, peoples all over the world. We have to be very critical when the colonial news and all these organizations says Jamaica fixed and it's better, Nigeria's fixed and it's better. What does the common Jamaican say? What does the common African say? But yes, people, without further ado, I'm going to end the stream there and I'm going to resume this tomorrow with Governor General Stargy.
Yeah. Like I said, my paper. Yeah. My brother. Yeah, before you go, yeah. My paper in Jamaica, all over the world. Buckingham Faso. Yeah. Captain Chari. No tax in this country to pay. No food tax, no clothes tax, no business tax, no working tax. Everywhere in the world, the maroon them say no tax to pay. Come and get a maroon document and say, in America, Canada, anywhere we live, we don't pay tax. But we are the maroons. Yeah, maroon don't pay tax in the world. You're not colonial. And this is the only thing we say, no colonial don't own the earth no more. Yeah, because we find no colonial is thief, liar, and criminal. And they stabilize our people and they evaluate us. Yeah, and don't like us. None of these colonial entity, people, don't like we. They vaccinate us and depopulate us and give us disease for a born. They are the one create HIV, they are the one create every disease around. Yeah. We don't want them to live around us no more. They set law on for them people. We set law on our people. Yeah. They to guide for them people. We guide our people. Because they are junkie. Want to lead us. Want to protect us. Look at us. This disability, our kids, them. Vaccinate our kids, them, immunize them, bare diseases, and base defaulted. Yeah. Bill Gates and him friend them. So all compartment of them. They are the one. The paper, open the eyes, link up with the Maroon government, and be a part of us. Yeah. Enough is enough. Yeah. Enough is enough, my paper. All over the world. Log into Frontline Media. This is the media. We're covering the truth and the right and the justice for our nation all over the world. This is a multicultural Frontline Media. Yeah, no racism.
Come on.
Like I said, black and white is going through the same thing. Every day. Black pay tax, white pay tax. Look in the earth. What is going on? The man.
All right, you heard it from the Maroon Governor General himself, the Maroon Chief, Stargy Standout. And yes, my people, I'm going to end the stream there. Appreciate you guys, and we'll lock in tomorrow. This has been Frontline FM, and I appreciate you all.
You are tuned in to Frontline FM.